Welcome to CWU Live, which once again isn't live because we've come to report from a local reps meeting in the Northwest and North Wales. And it's been a really interesting meeting so far. Local reps have had the chance to put questions to union leaders. Also speaking was Justin Madders, who is the Minister for Employment Rights. There were some really tough questions put to him. Lots going on in this show, lots of issues, lots of guests. I hope you enjoy it. I'm joined now by Assistant Secretary Outdoors, Tony Bouch. We're going to talk about USO pilots. I know you've been visiting an office this morning on USO. Tell me about that.
So obviously we're in Liverpool today doing a local reps briefing for the whole of the North Wales North West division. And obviously this morning we visited Liverpool South. So Liverpool South isn't in the pilots currently, but Liverpool South, obviously we went there and briefed them on where we are currently with the USO talks, pay, etc., and obviously the state of the office, what's going on there, and the general feedback from the members in the office. So walked the floor, myself, Martin, the branch with the divisional reps, and then obviously did a Q&A session with the members this morning. So just basically getting out and about, reconnecting with our members.
And tell me, for people watching, the latest when it comes to those USO pilots. There's currently 35 delivery offices on the pilots. How are those going?
Yeah, so 35 offices are live in the pilots out of 37. So there's still 2 that haven't gone live yet, which are subject to national talks around their attendance pattern. So we believe that they could be have an improved attendance pattern, and we're at sort of stalemate with the business, but that's getting picked up in the national talks. The 35 pilot offices that are live, we've currently now in a situation where we're applying fixes for every single one of those offices. Every office now is completed. I think there's 5 that haven't as of yet, but 30 out of the 35 have completed their post-optimization review. So that is the local CWU rep, the area reps, the divisional rep with their interfaces, going through all of the issues that we're experiencing in the pilots, putting in place an action plan, putting in place the fixes, and then there's a tracker in place to ensure that each of those fixes are applied. So whether that's in reinvestment, whether that's changes to the design, whether that's changes to the model, whatever it is that's in place, that becomes an audit process. And we've made it clear to the company in the national talks, there'll be no national agreement, no deployment plan until we fix those pilot offices. So that's in situ, that's in train, and we're absolutely clear that we're going to put all those fixes in place.
And I mean, are you confident that the management, that the company are open to that? Because obviously, I suppose they want to cut costs, right? So it's not the case that if you say, "Oh, we need more workers there," they're going to say, "Oh, brilliant, yeah, we'll put some more workers there."
So I think there's 2 parts to that question, Michael. There's the one that says, we believe that some of the hours should have been put in before the pilot started. And actually what's transpired is the pilots have identified what we asked for before the pilots went live needs to be put in place. So that is being worked through. We're putting that in place. Likewise, in some instances, it's working through whether it's an outdoor problem, whether it's an indoor problem, what is the root cause. Each of those locations, each of the 35 offices are going to be doing that one by one. Now, where the business are nationally, they know, and they've signed up to some recent joint statements. It's in the Section 7 of the Rebuild and Raw Mail Agreement, which our members are going to vote on as part of the pay deal, that we will not reach an overall agreement to USO reform until the pilot offices have been remedied and all the fixes have been put in place. So it's in their interest that they want to box on as quickly as they possibly can, but it's in their interest to make sure that's fixed, and we're going to hold them to account on that.
And I understand there was a bit of a breakthrough last Friday in talks. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so we met the business last week regarding obviously some of the pilot offices, how we were going to unlock the Section 7 words, which said we would reach an agreement by the 18th, or the aim was to reach an agreement by the 18th of July. We've made it clear that hasn't happened, but we met the business on Friday. We've put forward an alternative model. So we've got the optimised delivery model, which is not delivering second-class mail sort, non-priority items Monday to Friday. They just get delivered every other day. So it's been called the optimised delivery model, speed of delivery. We've put through that, given where we are in the pilot offices, so 5 have been badged as a car crash. There's a number of offices that need more investment, more fixes. There's some that are working well, but we're concerned that they're only working well because of the surplus staff in those offices are being utilised to support the duties that are struggling. And when that gets switches off, that will just break those offices. So therefore, we've said we've put forward a potentially a heavy and light model, which changes the previous raw mail design. The company have listened to that, and as at this moment in time, this talk scheduled tomorrow and all of next week to try and reach an agreement and further that development from last week.
And I heard when you were sort of talking to reps earlier, there was some discussion about this new model. When you try it, will it be the same USO pilots, or do you think they've already gone through enough and you might try some different delivery offices for the sort of the new model that you're testing out?
Yeah, so look, the first thing is for all the pilot officers, we've got to fix them. We've got to make sure it's there. But one of the things, and we've touched to some of the reps in the Northwest today, there's three of the officers in the Northwest. We've been clear that in some instances they're a little bit battle fatigued. There's been the spotlight on them. But we want to give some of them the option, and we're going to discuss that with the company, depending on where the talks take place over the next 2 weeks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
No worries, thank you. Thanks to the members as always.
I'm joined by Davie Robertson, Assistant Secretary, Processing, Distribution and Parcel Force. I was just speaking to Tony Bouch about how the USO pilots were going, and I suppose he can give the perspective, particularly of people working outdoors, so delivery offices. And from your perspective, how are the USO pilots going?
Tony's absolutely right, and Tony, I'm sure, has given an update on the 35 live pilots just now in delivery. Obviously in the areas that I sort of look after, the upstream areas, processing and distribution, the change agenda is not as severe. But it is crucial that the mail centres and distribution play their part, because obviously the presentation of work to the delivery offices is absolutely key to making the pilots and the USO change work. I'm sure most people will be aware to some degree of what it looks like. Effectively, the mail centres defer traffic that's not for delivery that day and hold it in the mail centre. And it's absolutely crucial if the pilots or any version of the USO, and I believe Martin's been updating reps this morning on the latest discussions, but any of the revised models, whether it's ODM, whether it's the heavy and light, absolutely depend on the mail centres doing their part, making sure that they separate the first class and second class items, make sure that they run separate MEC plans, make sure that on the manual sort that they sort first class and second class separately, and that we do defer the work in the mail centre if it's not due for delivery that day. That helps mitigate the impact on delivery duties. It should help with managing the workload and the fatigue issues that I'm sure Tony will have addressed. So while it might not be as visible, and it's not going to change duty structures and attendance patterns and the way that the delivery challenges that have been dealt with in the pilots are just now, it is absolutely key that we make it work. Exactly the same in distribution. It's not going to be a fundamental change, but equally we all need to play the part, make sure that the work plan disciplines are in place to alleviate the impact or the scope of the impact in delivery. So we're absolutely part of it, but it would be fair to say, a lot of the change agenda is falling on delivery as part of these pilots.
And so I suppose people working in mail centres, the people you're responsible for, the USO change in general, the USO reforms in general, aren't presenting such a radical change to their potential work pattern, and so I suppose they might have less concern about these pilots than people in the delivery offices. Is that fair to say?
I think it is fair to say. It certainly won't have the same impact on wholesale impact on the workload. It does entail changes to working practices, and it's crucial that that they are adhered to. I think for me the important thing is, though, and it's about how we make sure that the message lands, because it would be very easy if you're sitting in a mail centre or you're a distribution driver or you're a network driver, it'd be very easy to say, this ain't really my gig, we're not really affected by it, what's happening over there is a delivery issue. And that's most certainly not the case. Every part of the network has to operate together to make sure we get the best and most manageable presentation of workload into delivery and to mitigate some of the change agenda that's in there. So you're absolutely right. It's not going to be as visible as it is in delivery, but it's crucial that we get the message across that everybody in Royal Mail is part of the USO change. And if we're going to test it properly, we need to make sure that we are presenting the correct mail to the delivery office. We're not leaking mail that's not for delivery into the office on the wrong day. And we can only do that if everybody's bought in and engaged. And that is something of a challenge for us, making sure that people who maybe don't feel or see the impacts on a day-to-day basis know how important it is that they play their part.
Davie Robertson, thank you so much for joining us for CWU Live.
But there is something up to say. I said it earlier. Gates Daniels' words, or Israel has the right to turn off the food and water supplies. That'll be never forgiven. That'll be never forgiven. And your stance, and I'll say it, the bad great famine going on in Gaza, what's your stance on that, Dustin?
I'm joined now by Justin Madders, Minister for Employment Rights, who's been speaking to reps here. Let's begin by talking about the Employment Rights Bill, the New Deal for Working People, which the CWU was one of the driving forces behind. As far as I understand, there's been quite a lot of pressure on you, I suppose, from the business lobby, potentially from the right-wing press, to water that down. How are you responding to that?
Well, look, we want this to work in practice, so we do listen to everyone about what this bill will look like in reality when it's delivered. But look, I think the response from affiliated trade unions has been, yeah, you're delivering what you promised, and I think that's obviously really important. That make work pay commitment from the manifesto is the integrity of that is intact.
And on the future of the Royal Mail, I mean, we talk about this on the show every week, that there is kind of a structural crisis in the industry in the sense that people send less letters because of the rise of email, obviously. And what Dave Ward's often talking about, General Secretary of the CWU, is how to maybe expand the role of the postal worker. And I suppose the difficulty is that I think everyone values their postal worker as someone who sort of can keep company to isolated people, someone who holds communities together, but you don't get paid for that. So, I mean, how can the government step in to sort of keep the things people value about Royal Mail when the business model is to some degree being undermined by the internet?
Well, there's a number of elements to that question. So I think the first thing is about the sort of added value that the postie brings, and I think we all recognise that there aren't that many people who are out in the community every day, can see every door, are pretty well known to most people, and actually have a potentially very important role in sort of providing that extra safety net. I know I'll mention one of my local posties, Colette Ryder. She's very keen on doing more in that area. We've worked with her informally when there's been sort of concerns raised, but I think that's an important thing moving forward. But on sort of broader structural issue, yeah, look, we know that the number of letters has gone down by billions, hasn't it? And parcels are so much more important. But I think that the Royal Mail's got a huge advantage, that it's got the reputation, it's got the workforce, and it's got the history that none of the competitors have got. I think there are questions about whether the market is operating as a level playing field at the moment. But I think that actually people trust the Royal Mail, people trust the postie, and that sort of important factor is you just can't sort of buy that, and I think that gives them a really good head start.
And the level playing field, presumably that's where government has a role, right? Because obviously the other thing that gets talked about on the weekly shows is the CWU obviously wants Royal Mail to be financially viable, and what the managers will always say is we're competing with Every, who are on the self-employed model where they don't have pensions, they don't have workers' rights, you don't even have to pay petrol for the car as the company. So it's your job really, isn't it, to stop a company like Every undercutting a company like Royal Mail by exploiting their workers? And I suppose, how do you do that?
Well, look, we've committed as part of our Make Work Pay agenda to consult on moving towards a two-status employment model. So actually, this whole bogus self-employment that is sometimes alleged some of the companies are operating is removed, because it does create an unfair advantage. People aren't even getting the minimum wage when they're working. That model, you clearly can't compete if you're operating as a responsible business, respecting people's employment rights. So look, we want that floor to be raised. We want everyone to have a minimum level of security and entitlement at work. But the whole sort of question of status is very complicated. There are lots of different models out there, lots of different nuances, and that's why we need to consult on how we actually best deliver what we all want, which is a level playing field.
Yeah. And credit to you for standing up in front of local reps and sort of taking their questions. I have to say there was quite a lot of anger in the audience. Lots of people saying they felt let down by the Labour government, and lots of people saying, their friends and family were considering voting for reform. I mean, would you, I suppose, accept that the first year of this Labour government hasn't gone very well and there is a lot of anger out there?
Well, look, I think we have done a lot of very good things. We're obviously not getting that message through, and I think that the traditional media and social media are not particularly disposed to accentuating the positive things that we've done as a government. But I hear that message. I hear that in my own constituency as well. And part of the reason why I'm here today is actually to say, look, this is actually what we are doing as Labour government. That employment rights bill is going to be the biggest uplifting workers' rights in a generation. It's really going to make a difference to CWU reps on the ground. It's going to make working conditions better for everyone across the country. It will be something that everyone and in every street will be able to see something that's improved in terms of their working conditions as a result of that bill. And we know that Reform will just get rid of it all. They voted against it consistently. They are a real danger to workers' rights and trade unionism in this country. And I think we need to make sure that message is hammered home, not just by people like me, but also by the CWU and their reps, because they're the people who talk directly to their friends and family, and they should be able to say, actually, this isn't for you. This isn't really what this country needs. It's a lot of populist nonsense, which is actually quite dangerous.
But I suppose in terms of the things that have gone wrong, which is difficult to blame on social media, so the winter fuel payment, which I think was going to save £1.4 billion, has completely trashed your reputation among lots of people. Obviously, you've U-turned. What have you learned from that? How will you change so that doesn't happen again?
Well, look, I wasn't involved in the original decision, so I don't quite know what preparatory work was done, but it was obviously a very early decision made by the government. And I think actually the fact that they have changed is a sign that we are learning, because quite often people will portray a U-turn as weakness, but actually I think that if you've done something, you can see that there are going to be consequences on it which aren't ones you can really support. You do need that ability to listen and to change tack, and I think that actually most people get the idea that not everyone needed the winter fuel allowance, but actually there were probably a lot of people who were just below the threshold that we've put it down to who did need it. So I think we found that right balance now, where we're saying actually those people who are millionaires definitely don't need it, but actually there's a whole group of people who are not earning a great deal of money, but we're earning more than the threshold before, who will now be protected. And I think that's the right balance that you get from being listening and being responsive.
And I've got to put to you sort of some of the questions that I think were most passionately put from members here and got the biggest round of applauses, which were about Gaza. Because right now there is a situation just this week where over 100 aid organisations are saying that the whole of Gaza is on the brink of famine. Now, I know that in your answer you said that David Lammy has put out a strong statement. You said that some arms have been stopped from sending to Israel. But I think most people would say, why are any arms still being sent to Israel? I think people would say, why are you not sanctioning this country? And we have seen for a very long time Labour use tough words about Israel. But if I'm Netanyahu and I'm saying, well, they might use tough words, but they haven't done anything whatsoever over the past 2 years to really put pressure on me, other than sanctioning a couple of far-right cabinet members, when we know the real force behind this genocide is Netanyahu. It's not Ben-Gvir or Smotrich. I mean, this is really damaging people's faith in the Labour Party. And I think also, I would say this is a moral catastrophe for Labour to be standing by and letting this happen. I mean, how would you respond?
Well, I absolutely disagree that you suggest that we are letting this happen. Clearly, we've been consistent in calling for an immediate ceasefire for the delivery of aid into the affected areas. Look, we've suspended 30 arms licenses already. That's something that hasn't happened for decades. That's made a real difference, I think, on the ground. The only components that are still licensed are the F-35s, which actually we don't control once they leave this country, and some of them are going to support Ukraine, and clearly we don't want them to be able to not have the ability to use the F-35s. But that is something that I know that the Foreign Secretary is reviewing constantly. He's talked about what more can be done in terms of actions to put pressure on the Israeli government. There have been sanctions against individuals. We've ceased negotiations on the trade agreement. There are steps we're taking, but it is important that we actually act in unity with the rest of the world in terms of putting that pressure so it has the maximum effect. I'm sure that there will be more done, because I think we all are horrified by what we see over there, and we want it to come to an end as soon as possible.
I suppose on that, what would you say to a country that said, look, we've asked Russia to stop invading Ukraine multiple times, but we're still sending them some weapons because it's difficult to interrupt the supply chains. And yeah, we've sanctioned a couple of oligarchs. We're not going to sanction the country more generally because that could be diplomatically difficult. Would you think that that was really a country that was trying to stop the Russian invasion of Ukraine, or would you think that was a country that was making excuses for itself? Because I think that's how people look at the UK when it comes to Gaza. You're not taking the concrete action that could actually stop a war.
Well, I don't accept that characterisation at all. I think we are taking concrete action. We are doing things that the previous government did not do. I accept that we clearly need to be taking further steps for it to be effective. But look, I know that everyone in government is extremely concerned about what they see, and they want to find a way to bring this to an end. But diplomacy isn't just simply about what happens publicly. There are things that conversations that happen behind the scenes, and it's important that actually when we take steps, we do it with other countries so that it has maximum effect.
I mean, you can take a lead, though, can't you, with other countries? So, I mean, there are countries like Spain who are saying that they're not going to send anything to Israel, Ireland as well. The UK has been dragging its feet, really. I mean, if you want to take a leadership role as a Labour government against genocide, you can't really say, well, we have to wait for Germany to act.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that we will want to act in concert with other countries to make sure that it has maximum effect. So I know that there is an attempt to try and get countries together at the UN in the not too distant future. So actually that we do act in concert and we have that maximum effect.
Is Labour trying to get allied countries to sanction Israel?
I'm not in the Foreign Office. I don't know exactly what conversations are taking place, and you would not expect me to be giving you details of diplomatic negotiations that are happening behind the scenes anyway.
All right, Justin Matters, thank you very much for your time today.
All right.
I'm joined now by Martin Walsh, Deputy General Secretary, Postal. Martin, ballots are going to be going out to members in a couple of weeks on the pay deal that you agreed with EP Group. Obviously, you're recommending they vote for it. Could you summarise why?
Look, I think it's important to recognise that, one, we've separated pay from USO and every other change. It's the first no-strings pay deal we've had for a number of years. It's above inflation, 4.2, flowing through to everything. And we recognise that everyone would want more, but this is a company which is in a great financial position. And therefore 4.2% without any conditions attached is a good deal.
And I suppose things that people are disappointed about, that there's no, I mean, it doesn't directly equalise new entrants with people on legacy terms. I know there is some commitment to do that in the future, but might it be the case that new entrants feel let down?
No, I don't accept that, because one is the EP agreement, and EP has only been the owners of the company since 2nd of June. That agreement says on equalisation, we will do the first touch on the equalisation within 3 months of the transaction, so 3 months from June, which is September, and we will agree the whole plan for equalisation of pay, terms and conditions of new entrants within 6 months, which is December. We've got to hold them to account, but we will be equalising their contracts.
And what's the strongest pushback you're getting when it comes to the deal? Obviously, you didn't get everything you wanted when you were in the room. That's sort of the nature of a negotiation. If you got everything you wanted, it wouldn't be a negotiation. But I suppose, what are people telling you they're most disappointed about, and how are you responding to that?
I think it's mixed. I think people were telling us we didn't want a no-strings. We wanted a no-strings pay deal. We've got here, but now they're saying, well, why didn't we leverage USO? To it. The reality is 4.2% on a no-strings pay deal is good. It's the second above inflation pay rise we've had since privatisation, in a company which obviously will probably declare a profit of around 20 million. Our year one pay deal is worth 220 million. Separating USO was very important, and we are now looking at a different option to the optimised delivery of method, which will change their potential savings from Royal Mail. And those negotiations are commencing again tomorrow and next week, and we'll give more information on that in due course. So the pay deal, separating that, an improvement on VR terms, a commitment to reduce agency, give more opportunities for part-timers to uplift their contracts, and an incentive scheme which is going to be piloted in a number of units is what our members will be voting on.
And I read about the commitment to sort of reduce the use of agency workers and give workers a greater chance to do overtime, etc. How does that work in terms of a commitment? That's not just EP Group saying we'll try to give more overtime to properly employed workers instead of contractors. What does it mean for there to be a commitment, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, so there's two things within that commitment. One is currently there's 7,500 full-time equivalents of agency within Royal Mail. And it says any agency staff which has been in more than 13 weeks, we can have a conversation to replace that individual with the Royal Mail staff, either uplifting a part-time contract to full-time or getting a transfer in from outside Royal Mail, or we recruit to it. So these are three important things which weren't there before then. The other thing is we reduce agency, we may have more funding to improve overtime in SA, because agency costs £30 an hour. The individual don't get that, the agency does.
And I mean, from memory, this pay deal took a long time to negotiate, right? You're in the room for a very long time. Can you tell us about that process and what was the final thing that meant you said, okay, this is a deal I can recommend?
Look, we started the pay talks when under the Royal Mail board, and what happened is EP took over those talks on the 2nd of June, which changed the dynamics, and we were able to separate the USO from basically the pay deal, which meant we had a no strings pay deal. And the important bit, Royal Mail would never have agreed to that. So that's a sign from EP they want to be different.
And I suppose just to clarify, if anyone's sort of wondering the significance of separating the USO from the pay, so often in this kind of negotiation between an employer and a union, they say, well, we'll give you 4.2% if you agree to give up XYZ rights. And you said, no, we want a pay deal without giving up anything else.
Yeah. Since 2000, we've only had one other pay deal, which was no strings, and that was just over 2% in 2017. This is the second, and it would have been easy for the employer just to insist we agree to the USO and pay. USO now will be a separate vote of our membership, a standalone vote, which obviously we've got to get the right agreement for the membership to accept that.
Martin Walsh, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
Thank you.
I'm joined by Carl Webb, no relation to Chris, you've informed me. Regional Secretary Northwest. So you've helped organise this event. Tell me how it's gone, why you think it's important.
Well, what we've had 160 workplace representatives from across the Northwest and North Wales division able to come and listen firsthand from the national leadership of the CWU, and also a senior politician who came down to talk about our New Deal for Workers, because it was the CWU who started that campaign. And it was really interesting about all the benefits that hopefully workers are going to receive in regard to that. So they could heard firsthand, but they could also ask some difficult questions in regard to some of the decisions and some of the actions that the Labour government has taken over the last 12 months. But also obviously discuss the good things as well that they've done. But also to be able to ask questions of the leadership from the CWU because there's loads of things and loads of changes have been happening in such a short time in regard to the takeover, the USO. So I think it's really important that we show support and solidarity for our workplace representatives who have the most difficult job to do, because they're interfacing with our membership on a daily basis. So we need to make sure, and we do need to get better at it, to make sure they're given the information and the correct information to be able to give to our members. So yeah.
And it did seem like, I have to say, a day with quite a lot of accountability. You had lots of quite tough questions to Martin and to the other union leaders, some very tough questions to the MP. Were you surprised in a way at the questions from the floor? There were a lot about reform, quite a lot about Gaza as well.
Our reps are well informed. They understand what's going on politically and so on. And I think the standard of questions was fantastic. And obviously there's a lot of concern out there what's going on in Palestine. You know, there's a lot of concerns about some of the decisions on the winter fuel allowance and that. And then obviously you've got a lot of concern from our local reps and our members of what's going on with regard to the trials. So the actual, standard of the question, I'm not surprised. You know, it was excellent.
Carl, thank you so much for helping to organise this, and thank you for speaking to me today.
Cheers, thank you.
I'm joined by Paul Dugdale, Divisional Officer for North West and North Wales. You're the driving force behind this conference. Tell us why you thought it was sort of important to put this on.
So what this is about, it's about us giving something back to the local reps. We ask an awful lot of them, and I don't think anybody deliberately takes any of them for granted, far from it. But I do sometimes think that they're the ones with the least access to headquarters. And I think to listen directly to Martin and Tony and Davie, it gives them some confidence, it gives them a lift, it gives them a boost. It feels like they're being recognised, and it's been an ambition of mine for a long time as a divisional officer to put something like this on. Last year was well received, and we wanted to do it again, and hopefully we'll do it again next year, yeah.
And it did feel like there were lots of tough questions put to both the union leadership and also the MP in attendance, Justin Matters. Do you think that's important for sort of accountability within the union?
100%, yeah, absolutely. They're the ones, see, the local reps, they're the ones who day in, day out have to face up to our members on the shop floor. So a lot of the decisions taken by our leadership that impacts everybody, everybody's working life, the local reps are that interface, the local reps are the one that have to front them up. And so, quite rightly, they ask the tough questions, they hold in the leadership to account. And I thought they handled it really professionally. I thought they were some really good questions. And the same for Justin Matters, the MP.
I mean, it's a difficult time for the union or the workforce in the sense that there are so many changes. You've got the USO changes, you've got the ownership change, you've got the pay deal, which was announced. I mean, what are you sensing is the mood of people in the North West and North Wales?
I think the mood, especially in deliveries, is one of frustration. We're dealing with chaos day in, day out. Where mail's failing regularly. Our members are proud of the job that they do, and with what's happened over recent years, the direction of travel from the company, it's crippled quality. It's dragged morale to the floor. And, that's like, and I hate using this terminology, but it's almost like a cancer that spreads. And that creeps into other functions as well. I'm not saying other functions are happy by any stretch of imagination. But yeah, the mood's low, and we desperately need them to give them a lift and a boost as soon as we can. I think the pay deal will be part of that. I think that will start once we start getting money in people's pockets. But I think we have to change. If we're serious about making it a place where you want to come to work, you want to enjoy the job, where people are coming into it, new starters, they're leaving within weeks, months, if that. When we joined the industry a long time, it was a job for life. And I think what we need to do as a union is get to a place where people want to stay and value the job. And to do that, we've got to lift morale.
Paul Dugdale, thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm joined by Paul Chadwick, Branch Secretary for Warrington Mail Centre. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Tell us what you've got out of today.
Well, it's been quite a good meeting, really. We've had Justin Matters here from the Labour Party, and he's been basically told what we're happy with the Labour Party in general and what we're not happy with on a general scale. We're now getting a briefing on how the USO is going to affect everyone, and I think it's there's still a lot of questions, but I think that the union in general going in the right direction that way, So yeah, Chris Webb's been on as well, speaking about the comms departments and how we can get the message across. But overall, I think the pay deal that's getting put forward is a good pay deal, and I think it'll be accepted. And then the USO is the big deal, and it's the one that we need to work hard on for all our members.
And the members in your branch, I suppose, what are you hearing from them? What's the mood, I suppose, especially on the pay deal? People will be voting on that soon.
Yeah, I think for the pay deal, I think it's a pretty straightforward 4.2%, and I think people are in need of it. I think there's the prices, the way prices are going up. I think people are really concerned about of the cost of living. So I think on that side, it's fine. I think that the USO is more straightforward for a mail centre. There are difficulties and there are going to be certain changes, but not like it is on delivery. Delivery is a really big deal, you know.
And I suppose because Justin Manners was here, there's been a lot of talk about politics today. Lots of questions to him were put about how, you know, Labour have disappointed people and their friends and family are turning to reform. I mean, what are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I did get up and I did speak, and what I said is the danger of reform, because people are looking for change. People are always looking for change in politics, and the Labour Party have come to governments, and basically they're looking to claim money back from pensioners and from working class people, and people are not happy with that. But the problem that I see is the first thing they want to do is they want to say, right, we're not happy with the Labour Party, so we're going to look at voting for reform. Well, reform is just a ragtag pile of failed Conservative MPs, and really, why would you want to go back to looking at them because they're under a new name, under a new badge? No, they're just going to be worse than the last Conservative government were for the 14 years. So what we need is a real change. If we're going to look for a change, we need a real change, and hopefully there's one on its way.
Paul Chadwick, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you for watching CWU live from Liverpool, and thank you to all of my guests. Really interesting answers and some challenging conversations, actually. We'll be back next week with another episode. So until then, stick with your union.